It all began with a message. A tiny, seemingly innocent notification that popped up on a screen, a little bubble of text that would ultimately inflate into a storm that would redefine my marriage. One of his co-workers was being just a little too friendly. It wasn't obvious, not in a way that would raise alarms for most people, but I've always been a student of subtext, of the things that are said in the spaces between words, and it was clear she liked him. Very clear. Now you might expect that what I felt in that moment was jealousy. A sting of betrayal, perhaps. But you'd be wrong. I didn't get jealous. I got an idea, a better idea, a thrilling, dangerous, and absolutely intoxicating idea. So when my husband Liam came home that night and saw what I had set up for him, when he saw the look in my eyes, I just smiled. "Come here." I whispered my voice, a low, promising hum. "This part's for you. Before we go on, before I pull back the curtain on this unbelievable true story, I want to welcome you. If you're a regular here, you know what to do. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. And if you're new, welcome, you're in for a treat. This is a place where we explore the beautiful, messy, and complicated truth about human desire." He was already grabbing the sheets, his knuckles white, when I went back down on him again. My lips and tongue followed the familiar, intoxicating path I knew drove him absolutely crazy, from the hard line of his stomach down to the very root of him. I loved watching the way his chest rose and fell in sharp, ragged breaths, hearing the way his breath would catch and hitch in his throat. It made me want more. Every sound he made, every little involuntary movement, every twitch of his muscles, it was mine. I was the conductor of this orchestra, and I knew his body better than he did. I knew how to keep him there, right on the bleeding edge of release, holding him in that exquisite, perfect torture just long enough to make him completely lose his mind. By the time I was on top of him again, straddling his hips, his eyes looked hazy, unfocused, lost in the pleasure I was giving him. His hands were a frantic symphony on my body, sliding over my hips, my waist, my back, like he couldn't choose between holding me close enough to merge with me or letting go completely. He didn't need to decide. I had already made the decision for both of us. And when he finally gave in, his control shattering, pulling me down closer, his fingers digging into my skin as he whispered my name, Maya, like a prayer, like he needed me more than air. I just smiled. Afterward, we collapsed in a tangled mess of slick skin and heavy breathing. The sheets were kicked to the floor. The air in the room was thick and warm. "You're unbelievable," he whispered, still trying to catch his breath. "That might have been the best ever." I leaned over him, my hair tickling his chest, and kissed the spot right above his heart. I grinned. "You say that every time." He smirked, his eyes fluttering open to look at me. "And you keep proving me right." I sat up on one elbow, feeling powerful, sated, and utterly in tune with my husband. I reached for his phone on the nightstand. "Actually," I said, my voice playful, "there's something I want to show you. I saw this move the other night online. I think you'll really, really like it." I unlocked his screen with a familiar swipe of my thumb. But before I could even open the browser to find the video, a message popped up at the top of the screen. A banner notification from a name I recognized. Amber. "Amber, you were hilarious in the meeting today. I swear you always make my day better." I paused. Amber. She was new to his marketing team, a recent hire he'd mentioned a few times. He'd said she was smart, funny, a real go-getter. Curious. My thumb hovering for just a second, I tapped the message thread. My intention wasn't to snoop, not really. It was more of an instinct, a flicker of curiosity. Her texts weren't dirty. There was no explicit sexting, nothing you could print out and present as concrete evidence of an affair. But it was all there in the subtext. The way she talked to him, the timing of her messages, often late at night, the excessive use of playful emojis, the relentless, almost cloying frequency of her compliments. It was obvious. She wasn't just being a nice, friendly coworker. She was into him. Hard. And what surprised me most? Him. Liam. He wasn't exactly flirting back, not in the way he flirted with me. But he wasn't stopping it either. He was receptive. He responded. He seemed entertained, flattered, And maybe a part of him liked the attention from the cute, funny girl at the office. "You know she's totally flirting with you, right?" I said, my voice carefully neutral as I continued to scroll. He looked over at me, his post-coital haze beginning to clear. "Who?" "Amber, from your job." I held the phone up, showing him the screen. "You always make my day better," with a little heart eyes emoji, really. He squinted at the screen, a slow, guilty smile spreading across his face. "Oh, that's just Amber being friendly." I raised a single skeptical brow. "Is it normal for friendly coworkers to say you light up their afternoons and send little winky faces after you tell a lame joke about spreadsheets?" He laughed, a genuine, slightly embarrassed sound. "Okay, I guess I never really thought about it that way. She's just bubbly." "She's not being subtle, Liam," I said, leaning in my tone, shifting from curious to playful. "And you're not exactly shutting her down." "I didn't think it meant anything," he replied, that small, guilty smile still playing on his lips. It's kind of nice, I guess, the validation." I leaned closer, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Oh, so you like being the hot guy in the office, the one the new girl has a crush on?" His eyes got wide, caught somewhere between guilt and amusement. "What?" "No, I mean, maybe a little—" I smiled and dragged my finger slowly across his chest, tracing the lines of his muscles. "It's okay, babe," I purred. "I get it. I'd flirt with you too." "You do flirt with me," he said, laughing, the last of his guilt melting away. I kissed him gently, a slow, deliberate press of my lips. "And now," I whispered against his mouth, "I'm going to show you something even better." He raised an eyebrow. "Better than that?" he asked, gesturing to our disheveled state. I didn't say anything. I just smiled, a slow, secret smile. I moved lower, much slower this time, locking eyes with him as I made my way down his body between his legs. He looked surprised, curious, intensely excited, and just a little bit nervous. I tilted my head, held his gaze, and said, "I saw this move. Let me try it." The next morning, I woke up alone in our sun-drenched bed. Liam had left early to meet a client out of town. He wouldn't be at the office, but Amber would. I stayed in bed for a long while, the sheets cool against my skin, thinking about her messages, the emojis, the way she always leaned into the conversations, trying to create a private world just for the two of them. I could picture her so clearly, laughing way too hard at his jokes in the break room, finding excuses to brush past his desk, her hand lingering on his arm for a fraction of a second too long. And I wasn't jealous, not even a little. I was fascinated. I felt a strange sense of power, of holding a secret that none of them knew. Liam, bless his heart, didn't really know what she wanted. He just saw friendly banter. But I knew. I saw the hunger behind her words because it was a hunger I recognized, and I also knew what Liam secretly wanted deep down. That fantasy he'd never ever say out loud, but would absolutely lose his mind over if it actually happened. The fantasy of being so desired that the women in his life couldn't help but want him together. And me, I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about it too. The idea of sharing him, not in a way that diminished my role, but in a way that amplified it, that put me in the center of it all. It was a thrilling thought. So I picked up my phone, my heart starting to beat a little faster, with a delicious, nervous energy. I found her number in his contacts and sent her a message from my own phone. "Me, hey Amber, it's Maya, Liam's wife. Any chance you're free this afternoon? Just want to talk. Nothing bad, I promise." She replied almost instantly. "Amber, hi, sure. Is everything okay?" I smiled. She was definitely nervous. "Me all good. Just an idea I wanted to run by you. Bring coffee and a solid excuse to leave work early. My treat." Now this is where my story truly begins. The plan is in motion. The invitation has been sent. What do you think is going through Amber's mind right now? Pure terror, curiosity? Let me know in the comments. And if you are enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel and lets me know you want more. Amber didn't make me wait. She showed up at my front door about 30 minutes later, 2 coffees in hand, a cloud of nervous energy preceding her. "Hi," she said, her voice a little shaky. Hey. I smiled a warm, disarming smile that I had perfected over the years. Come on in. She stepped inside, her eyes darting around our living room, taking everything in. She was even prettier in person than in her corporate headshot. Bright, intelligent eyes, a spray of freckles across her nose, and a nervous habit of chewing on her lower lip. You're even prettier than I remembered from the holiday party, I told her honestly as she set the coffee down on the table. Oh, thanks, she stammered, her cheeks flushing a delicate pink. Don't be shy, I said, gesturing for her to sit on the couch. I get it. Get what? She asked, her eyes wide. The messages, I said, my voice calm and even. The way you talk to him, your enthusiasm. She froze, completely, the color draining from her face. I didn't mean anything by that. I was just being friendly. I would never. I'm not mad, I said, cutting off her panicked denial. Not at all. She just stared at me, her mind clearly struggling to process this. I just think, I added, stepping closer, my voice dropping a little lower, that if you're going to flirt with my husband, you should do it properly. She just blinked. What does that mean? It means, I said, reaching out and gently brushing a strand of her soft brown hair back from her face, that I have a proposition for you. And then I kissed her. It was a soft, intentional, and completely unapologetic kiss. I didn't force it, just a gentle press of my lips against hers, a question asked without words. When I pulled away, she didn't move, she didn't flinch, she didn't run, which meant I was right. Her lips were parted, her breath shallow, her wide, beautiful eyes locked on mine like she wasn't sure if she was dreaming or just hadn't woken up yet. I brushed my hand down her arm, a slow, reassuring stroke. You're okay, I said gently. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. She swallowed hard. But you kissed me. I nodded, and I meant it. Her gaze searched mine for something. Doubt, permission, maybe both. I leaned in and kissed her again, slower this time. And this time, she didn't just accept it. She responded. I felt her body soften into mine, her hand drifting tentatively to my waist. When I eased the hem of her silk blouse upward, she raised her arms without a word of protest, a silent, willing surrender. Her skin was warm and soft, and the delicate lacy bra beneath made me wonder if she'd worn it, just in case, a secret hope for a day exactly like this. I didn't ask. I lifted the shirt over her head, my fingers grazing the smooth skin of her back as the fabric slipped free. Her bra followed then the rest, one layer at a time, until she was stretched out on my couch, beautiful and vulnerable, with nothing left between us. I took my time. This wasn't about rushing, this was about discovery. My lips moved over her collarbone, then down to her chest, tracing slow, deliberate lines along her ribs, her stomach, and the soft, sensitive skin of her inner thigh. Her breathing quickened with every inch, her fingers tightening slightly against the velvet cushions. When I moved lower, positioning myself right where she needed me, she was already trembling. I didn't rush. I simply listened to her body, to her breathing, her shifting the quiet, desperate sound she couldn't hold in. Her hips lifted slightly off the couch, an unspoken plea. I learned exactly what made her breathe like that, what made her arch her back, her hands gripping the cushions, and then what made her let go quietly, completely, every part of her giving in at once. I stayed there for a long moment afterward, resting my head near her hip as she gently, dazedly tangled her fingers in my hair. That was... She whispered, her breath still uneven. I know, I murmured against her skin. Just breathe. The room stayed still and quiet for a while, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows. I eventually sat up, my fingertips trailing lightly along her side. She turned toward me, her cheeks still warm and flushed. I've never done anything like that, she confessed, her voice barely audible. I smiled. You handled it beautifully. She let out a soft, breathless laugh. You're dangerous. Not really, I said, tilting my head. Just generous. She hesitated, a new kind of confidence entering her eyes. Can I didn't answer with words. I just leaned back and let the straps of my own top slide off my shoulders. She understood. Her touch started light tentative, exploring my collarbone, my waist following the shape of my body, like she was learning a secret she wasn't supposed to know. She kissed me again slower this time, more certain, more hungry. Then she slipped my top the rest of the way off and let her hands roam, taking her time as if memorizing every detail. I lay back watching her, letting her explore, guiding her with the sounds of my own pleasure. When her lips followed the line of my stomach downward, I felt the warm brush of her breath, and then her mouth. My hand drifted into her soft hair. She started gently, still learning, but every sound I made, every hitch in my breath gave her direction, and she kept going, growing bolder, more confident. I let go completely. My head tilted back. My breathing quickened, the tension building with every second until I curled forward as everything hit at once. The couch cushions tight in my grip, a sound escaping my lips that I couldn't quite keep in. She crawled back up beside me, her face glowing with a quiet, fierce pride. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. We just stayed there, wrapped around each other, my arm around her shoulder, her head on my chest, the sheets and our discarded clothing tangled at our waists. "I told you I had a proposition," I murmured, finally brushing a strand of damp hair behind her ear. She smiled against my skin. "I thought you meant like coffee." I was about to answer when we both heard it. The sound of the front door opening downstairs. Liam. He was home early. Amber stiffened instantly, her whole body going rigid with panic. I didn't. I held her a little tighter, met her wide, terrified gaze with a calm, reassuring smile. "Relax," I said, my voice a soothing balm. "This part's for him." Footsteps climbed the stairs. A moment later, he appeared in the doorway of the living room. He froze, his briefcase slipping from his fingers and hitting the floor with a soft thud. His eyes widened, taking in the scene. Me, topless, with a similarly topless Amber curled up in my arms on the couch. He stood in the doorway like he'd walked into a dream and wasn't sure if he was supposed to be there. I unwrapped myself from Amber and stood up slow and bare, the heat of everything we just shared still clinging to my skin. I walked toward him. I didn't speak. I just kissed him, a soft, sure, inviting kiss that tasted of me, of Amber, of our shared secret. He didn't move at first, his body stiff with shock, but when my hands went to the buttons of his shirt, he let me undress him. When I knelt to undo his belt, he breathed in sharply, and when I stood, took his hand and led him toward the couch, toward her, he followed wide-eyed and silent. Amber was already lying back, her hair tousled against the cushions, watching him with that intoxicating mixture of curiosity and nerves. I looked at her, and then at him. "Help me," I said to her, a simple command, an invitation. She nodded and moved toward him as he sat on the edge of the couch. I kissed his neck as she lowered herself slowly to her knees before him. He gasped the moment her lips reached him, his hands grabbing the cushions, his chest lifting beneath my touch. "It's okay," I whispered in his ear, my hand stroking his hair. "Let us take care of you." His body twitched under her expert touch, his breath catching in his throat. He looked at me, his eyes dazed, stunned. I kissed him again, deeper this time, steadying him as she continued. His hand found my back, gripping me, grounding himself. "You're doing so well," I whispered. His head tilted back. He moaned softly, his breath broken and helpless. Amber looked up at me, her lips wet, her eyes wide, and full of a shared, triumphant secret. I smiled. "Now it's your turn." "Lie back," I said gently to him. He did as he was told, stretching out across the couch, his breath shallow, his legs parting just enough. Amber looked up at him, uncertain of her next move. "He's nervous," I told her, my voice a soft murmur. "So are you, but you both want this." I turned to Liam, reached for his hand, and whispered, "She wants you. Go to her." He nodded slowly and climbed over her with a deliberate, reverent care. She reached up for him as he settled above her, her hands trembling slightly as they rested on his shoulders. I knelt beside them, a director watching my masterpiece unfold. I ran my hand along his back. "Take your time," I whispered. She reached for him, guiding him, and their bodies met. He froze for a second. I leaned in close. "It's okay," I whispered in his ear. "She can take you." His hips eased forward, and Amber moaned, her fingers tightening at his sides. "She's more than ready for you," I whispered against his shoulder. "See how she holds you." He began to move slow and steady at first, and Amber gasped beneath him, her eyes fluttering shut. I climbed over her carefully, one knee at a time, positioning myself just above her mouth. He paused to adjust, making room for me, and then her lips began to move against me, and I felt her taste her warmth. I gasped, dropping my hands to his chest as he thrust deeper, and I leaned in to kiss him, our mouths meeting just above the electric tension building between the three of us. "You're inside her," I whispered between kisses, "and she's inside me. Can you feel us both?" He nodded, his breath, shaking completely lost adrift in a sea of sensation between the two of us. Eventually, I slid off and let them breathe. "Your turn," I said to Amber, guiding her up. "Take control." She climbed on top of him, her hair falling forward, and eased herself down, her breath catching as she settled. His head fell back, his eyes wide, his hands finding her hips. "Nice and easy," I murmured, sitting beside them. "Let it build." Amber found her rhythm, rocking gently, beautifully. I kissed his cheeks, stroked his chest, and watched his muscles tighten under her. "She's beautiful like this," I whispered. "Isn't she?" He couldn't answer. He was breathing too fast, blinking like he couldn't believe it was real. I leaned close, kissed his neck, and whispered in his ear, "Taken, loved, that's what you are right now." His mouth parted again, a silent gasp. I watched them both, his jaw clenching, her body rising and lowering in a perfect hypnotic rhythm. I saw it building. His hands tightened around her waist, his breath caught, his legs shifted beneath her. "He's close," I whispered to her. She didn't stop. She kept moving, holding him right there on the edge. I cupped his face in my hands, kissed him hard. "Finish him, baby," I whispered to her. Amber dropped down once more, her own breath unsteady. And then Liam's whole body tensed, his head pressed back into the cushions, his fingers locking around her, a sound escaping his throat, half breath, half surrender. And then he let go. Amber collapsed on top of him, both of them breathless. I curled up beside them, brushing the damp hair from his forehead. His eyes finally fluttered open, looking at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated awe. I kissed him once more, a kiss that was slow, deep, and full of every single promise I had just kept. Then I whispered, "That's what you get for being such a good husband. So, be honest. If you walked in and saw that, would you hesitate, or would you jump right in? What would you do in his place? Tell me in the comments, I'll be reading every single one. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for being here."